I really appreciate how patient all of you are when we do this switch over, which is always awkward. All right. I think we're here. Excellent. Very good. Hello, everyone. So, please allow me to introduce our wonderful breaking teapot. I'm so excited. I tried to break my teapot. Please allow me to introduce our wonderful guest and my very good friend, which is fortunate because I tried to break my teapot, David Lee Summers, who is a marvelous author, a scientist, scholar, dapper gentleman, and just a very dear soul. So thank you, David, for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. As I told Madam before we got started, I'm wearing, this is actually my grandfather's service helmet from World War I. So it is actually vintage, the period of the book. So I won't be wearing it long. But I did want to show it off as people came in. So I will probably take it off in a little while to keep it preserved. But yes, it is over 100 years old. So
it is beautiful.
David, was he part of the expeditionary force?
No, he was actually over in World War I. So he was just after the expeditionary force. But I don't know a lot of that. This was my granddad Summers, and I don't know a lot of the details of where exactly he served, but yeah, I know he was fairly early in the war, but yeah, I don't know the details of exactly where in France, other than he was in France for a time.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you.
Well, so let me order my thoughts rather than jumping into the middle of things. So, David, we have known each other for almost a decade now, and we've been doing steampunk, both of us, and that's how I met you. But you came into steampunk before I started being involved in the community. So, to me, you're a veteran of the steampunk genre. I'm curious how you came to write steampunk, how you found it, and what keeps you coming back to tell these stories.
Well, my story of coming into steampunk is I was writing steampunk before I knew it had a name. In my very first Actually, my very first sale to a professional market was a story called The Slayers, which was about hunting dragons from airships, this very steampunk kind of retelling of which I sold in 2001. And soon after that, I started selling stories to David Riley, who's another Tucsonan, and he was in Colorado and ran a magazine called Trails, Intriguing Stories of the Wild West. And it was actually for short stories for that magazine that I created Ramon and Fatima, who many of us know from the Clockwork Legion books. And those I think the first one of those stories I wrote was somewhere right around 2007, 2008. But yeah, and at that time I was thinking of them as weird westerns, like the Wild Wild West TV show. But I was very much doing the mad scientists and the inventions and all of this. And I happened to be at, I think it was Mile High Con around after I think about the second or third of those stories was printed. And someone happened to say, that sounds like steampunk. And I'm like, what is the steampunk you speak of? And he said, well, like Sherry Priest. And this was right after Bone Shaker came out, and and I immediately picked that up, and I said, yeah, that's very much like what I write. And so very happily adopted the the steampunk mantle from that point on, and started looking for steampunk events to go to, which of course became, which was how I got involved in the very first Wild Wild West Con X number of years ago.
Yeah, no, what is that? A dozen years ago almost now.
Just about, yeah.
Um, so, or 11, something like that. That is where I first ran into you. And we didn't become friends immediately, but I was so intrigued by your writing at that point, and I was very happy to have the opportunity to know you later, you know, as a friend, and to get to read more of your work after that. There was a sort of wild author reading at that event.
Yes.
With something that might generously be called tea. So,
I don't remember the tea, which probably says something right by itself. I probably wisely drank something else.
served in Dixie cups. That was the first
Yes.
warning sign. But the readings were very good, and that was what I was there for, and I was so excited. It was you and Sherry Priest are the two authors I actually remember most well.
Yeah, Sherry Priest was there. Nick Valentino was there, who's a very good author who hasn't published anywhere near enough for his talent. And I was trying to remember who else was there. It seems like there was at least one other author there that day. I feel like Gail Martin was there, who's now formerly of Tucson, now of Las Cruces. She's moved over to this neck of the woods. So
you have been here growing and changing with the steampunk genre, developing your own writing, and I know you write other things as well, and we will talk about how you feel about your current story that we read and whether or not you would class it as steampunk or not. Spoiler, I would, but you're the author, so you get to decide. But as you've been developing, is there anything that you've enjoyed in the change of steampunk over the last dozen years as the genre has sort of expanded and contracted and people have tried different kinds of storytelling?
I think that for me, it's the fact that it's always been a really fertile playground for trying out different ideas. It's like it's really hard to try to to really pigeonhole steampunk, and actually that's one of the things I really love about it, because and I know a lot of people, there are people in the genre and people in the wider speculative fiction community who become very frustrated that they can't neatly pigeonhole what steampunk is. But it's like, whenever I've tried to come up with a working definition of it, it really just comes down to it's the Victorian inspired, fantasy or science fictional elements. Hi, June. We saw you briefly. There we are.
I moved her.
but yes, so we had but no, I think the thing is I like the fact that I can take these historical ideas, and I can imagine futures that have devolved. I can imagine alternate histories. I can imagine different flavors of alternate histories and different what if questions, and play with that. And maybe depending on the specific era, it might fall more into something that you might call diesel punk or atom punk, as opposed to steampunk. But to me, it's all one big part of this big, wonderful melting pot of just getting to play what if questions and find out where those lead you.
Absolutely. I'm not surprised. We're much of the same philosophy about the genre. I want to ask you one last question, maybe, for now, until we go around and speak with everyone else. I'll come back because I'm cheeky and I have more questions.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's something we've talked about previously that is sort of bittersweet, is that there is less steampunk being published by the major publishers. The genre is, they're almost not publishing steampunk at all anymore, the major publishers, the last few years. And do you think some of that is due to how hard it is to pigeonhole the steampunk genre, and so it's a little bit harder to market it?
Yeah, I think it almost certainly has to be, because I think the problem is you have to, when you are with one of the major New York publishers, your job is to find out what things sell to what people. And I think steampunk has always been sort of so broad and so hard to easily categorize that, and I think, steampunks as a collective, I think different of us, different members of the community have different tastes depending on what they like, and they sort of know from talking to friends which elements of steampunk fiction they're going to like and which they're not going to. And whereas an editor who's trying to say, I want to buy a steampunk book that I can market as steampunk that's going to fit to this very specific demographic, is going to have a hard time making that happen and be able to put really clear numbers to that. And I think, so it just becomes kind of a hard thing for a New York publisher to do, even, whether they want to do it or not. And so, I think that's one of the things you found, was that the New York publishers were getting into a mode where steampunk had to be Victorian England, had to have the gears, had to have airships in it, period. I like airships, so that's usually not a problem for me, but that's, but it had to be, but it had to have all these ingredients. And if it wasn't, then it really wasn't that, or you threw it over in the alternate history bin, or you threw it over in some other bin, and it just didn't end up being this consolidated steampunk marketing. And I think that's kind of unfortunate, because it sort of means that that what writers see, and I think what a lot of the mainstream writers who have a lot of New York published books see, is that they see that there isn't a market for it, and so they therefore don't write for it like they might otherwise. And even writers who might otherwise really enjoy that, or have alternate history interests that might go for that. So I think, I think it's just that there is less of it, and I think it is a lot of the marketing side of it that's for that. But
Yeah, because I think
fortunately, there's independent publishing.
Yeah. Oh, publishing. Oh, publishing. I'm glad I'm not a publisher. I think it seems really hard. But I do think the hunger for steampunk stories is still there, as evidenced by our book club. We do still want to read things, and I am so grateful that we have these lovely independent small house publishers that are still putting out wonderful stories, and that you are still writing steampunk, David. Thank you. And so with that, let us ask some questions around the room, because I don't want to monopolize you. I could, but I won't. So, Bill, let us start with you, sir. Would you tell me first what you are drinking and something you enjoyed about David's book?
Oh, I'm just drinking water this evening. I enjoyed this book, particularly for the views of the Mexican-U.S. border. I thought that was there was a great idea to set a story there, David. So kudos for that. What else did you ask me?
Oh, you answered both questions. You're good.
Did I? Very well.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Laura, you're up next.
All right. I just wanted to tell you I really enjoyed the book. I also liked the setting of the Mexican Revolution. My grandma grew up in Mexico during that time period, And reading about Pancho Villa just, reminded me of all the horror stories she used to tell me about how they were so afraid of Pancho Villa with her growing up in Mexico when she was a little girl. But my favorite character, I think, was Maria. I really liked from the very first time you meet her, you know that she's spying for someone. Something's up, but I like the twist at the end too. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. All right, June, are you ready? Would you yeah, perfect.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can, and you look very darling.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, well, I had to go over to my iPad, which means that the camera's over here, and I wanted to use my laptop because then it shoots straight at me, but here I am. Okay. I love David's books, especially the ones that are set in an area that we know so well. And having been to the Gadsden Hotel in Douglas and having spent some time going back and forth, I enjoy those parts of his books especially. So I guess that's not really a question, but because and I should tell you what I'm drinking. I just got myself a tequila, because I figured that was appropriate.
It is perfect for today. Lovely. Thank you, June.
It's bad Costco tequila.
You better get a lime.
I know, and I'm out of limes. I'll just have to drink it as it is.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
okay.
All right. Alan. Hello, Alan. It's good to see you, my friend.
Hello. It's good to be here. I am just drinking chai tea.
Oh, perfect.
And I enjoyed the book. I liked the setting. I sort of liked the little dimensional travel in it. I thought that was kind of fun. I wasn't quite sure who to root for. I was rooting for a lot of different characters, and I'm wondering who sort of you were rooting for when you were writing this book, because I got the feeling there's no like one, a good side versus an evil side, as you often see in so
That's a great observation.
many books. Maybe that's yet to come in the future versions of it.
Yeah, I really did not. It was one of those books where I, you kind of talk about writing villains. Sometimes a villain is really just is the hero of his own story, and this was kind of one of those stories that for me was very much that. And I kept finding myself, sympathizing with everyone in the story to some degree or another, and what side they actually had in it. Clearly Pancho Villa is the protagonist of the story, but that was, but aside from, but he's but at times he's kind of a jerk, so you don't necessarily, rooting for him is he the hero? Even though he's the main character, but I'll leave that to you all to decide.
Well, David, I must admit this is your most morally ambiguous story in that regard, and I'm going to dovetail onto this. And it occurs to me, it's perfect because Pancho Villa is an ambiguous character.
Yes.
There are no clear answers there. He's complex, and you did him justice in that way. So. Thank you. All right. Anne. Hello, Anne.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, once again, I didn't read the book before. I'll end up reading it after. But I want to thank you for continuing the narrative of the steampunk, because like she was saying before, it's very hard to find a steampunk that is, how do you describe it? Where you want it to be one thing, but it's a vast, from everything that everybody said, you're not just pigeonholed. And I appreciate that. So I'm here again to eat dinner and to listen to the great things about your book. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you, Anne, for being here. And Anne, by the way, David Lee Summers' books are addictive, and you have many to enjoy. So this is just a start. All right, Jeanette, my dove. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I had to unplug my headphones because it didn't seem like you guys could hear me earlier.
Oh, no, we could not.
So anyway, and note the seasonal hat.
Beautiful. Great headwear, everybody, by the way. Thank you.
And drinking this smoked Russian caravan tea from Steampunk Teas.
Oh, yes, I know.
It's so funny as soon as I open the bag, it just smells like campfire. It's like...
It's fierce. It's so good.
It's very smoky, and I find I do have to put some cream in it because it's a little smoky for me, but I do really like it.
It's like the Islay whiskies of tea.
I know. Now, see, the thing is, I like smoke, but I don't like peat. You know, like I like the smoke flavor, but I don't want to lick an ashtray.
Oh.
So,
all right, then the tea is good.
Yeah, so Islas are not my favorite. I'm more of a Highland Lowland girl, you know. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Scotch. That'll take a long time. So David, first I have to tell you my husband's name is David, so I'm gonna like your book no matter what. But I did actually really enjoy it. You know, I live in Sierra Vista, so pretty much all of the locations in your story I've been to. You know, I've been to the Gadsden. I've been to a couple of places in northern Mexico, though I'm not allowed to go there now because of my work. But I really am intrigued now to read the rest of the stories because that alternate dimension sounded really intriguing. I want to hear how it got to be that way over there, where everything's all crazy and how it speaks to how Pancho Villa was a smart person, you know, in that she could be like, so you do this, this, and this, and he's like, okay, got it. You know, when he'd never ridden a motorcycle before. But so that was cool because I understand. I mean, to have been as clever and evasive as he was, he had to have been very intelligent, and so you conveyed that really well in his ability to adapt to his situation.
So that was a motorcycle with a sidecar, so he didn't have to balance it.
Well, but still, the getting the throttle and the things and I mean, I have never actually learned how to ride a motorcycle, so I don't know how hard it actually is. But for someone who clearly he'd always only ever rode horses or drove carts, you know, that's a big leap. And then to flying an airplane, it's a relatively big leap. So, but again, he had to have been extremely adaptable. And so to be able to pick those things up so quickly, that was a good way to characterize that part of him that people may not have realized. Or to throw in the H.G. Wells reference there, that's pretty cool. So I enjoyed that too. And as someone else mentioned, Maria, I mean, clearly she was a spy or something. Otherwise, you wouldn't have given her full name and made them pay attention to her. I'm always like, oh, someone came out of the background. That's going to be important. So yes, I enjoyed the story very much. I look forward to reading the others now that I finally got an actual EPUB reader on my phone and my computer. Because that just seems, I'm like, why is my phone not doing what I tell it to do? And it says, oh, because I need a thing.
It does, you do.
But yes, I enjoyed it very much, and I look forward to the others.
Thank you, Jeanette. Wonderful. And also, I do love the chapeau.
I have to decorate it now.
Oh, yeah, you do. You do. Tassels. Robin, hello, my darling. Hello. I see you came dressed for the spirit of the season.
Hello.
So
I made a run to Geeky Teas in Burbank today, and I've been drinking their seasonal blend, which is the Pumpkin King, which is essentially OMG pumpkin spice and black tea.
Excellent.
And I really enjoyed a different aspect of the book because I've been reading Gail Carricker's Heroine's Journey, and as I started reading, I went, oh, we're on a heroine's journey here. We have a protagonist who's been been removed involuntarily from their area, who is dealing with that and gathering together all of their friends to go fight against a battle. And then we have a descent sort of into instead of an underworld, into an other world, at which point he has to defeat the gatekeeper, who is Althea, and then determine how to ascend, thus going back with a solution to then assist all of his friends in there. And I went, oh, great, I have a heroine. Fantastic.
It is fantastic, and it's a lovely observation too, because there's a lot to love about this particular story. And for those of you on Facebook who are just tuning in, we are discussing Empires of Steam and Rust, the series, and this is the story from David called The Revolutions of Air and Rust. So it's an overarching shared world of books. So thank you for bringing that up, because I do think that's a really good observation, and that David has done a lot of clever things in this story.
Oh, hold on. I need to show you adorableness. Be adorable.
Oh my goodness, we always need the kitties. We do. Hello, Sylvester. Thank you, Robin, for bringing us some adorable as well.
Here he goes, folks.
Lovely, sweet boy. Well, as we all enjoy Sylvester being adorable, Joseph, hello, my darling.
Good afternoon. Hello, David.
Hey, Joseph. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you. And then I don't know if you guys saw earlier, Edward stuck his head in and said hello to both of you.
I missed it.
Hello, Edward.
As always, love the book, David. I think this is, as you know, you and I will talk about this for hours on end, person to person, when I get to see you again.
Yes.
I will. What I'm drinking? What am I drinking? Some sort of sweet iced tea. I don't know what blend it is. It just, I made it, put ice in it. There you go.
As long as you're enjoying it, that's what matters.
But David, I really, as always, enjoyed this book. I actually told my father about this book, and he's going to borrow the book. Actually, I have to mail it to him tomorrow, because it turns out, according to him, our great grandfather also fought with Pancho Villa.
Wow. Okay. So
he knows all about. I've heard the rumor about it, but my father knows all about this.
The whole story.
So he wants to check out, and because I told him, is like, basically Pancho Villa is the main guy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see you, whenever that will be, hopefully soon, I will also give you his review as well, and we'll have lots to talk about.
Absolutely.
But great book as always, David. Nice to see you. Love the hat earlier.
Thank you. Yes, I've taken it off to keep it preserved, but
yes.
It is beautiful, a lovely treasure. Thank you, Joseph.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. For now, Karen, all the way from Adelaide, in the wee hours of the morning. Good morning.
Actually, we have daylight saving now, so it started at 10.
Oh, that's slightly better, isn't it?
Almost civilized.
Yeah. I'm drinking Lapsang Souchong.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice and smoky too. Yeah, love that. I'm going to get some more Russian Caravan, actually. I actually like it when people do steampunk outside of London, but I don't know the story, so I probably didn't enjoy that as much because I have none of that history. I actually was going, some of these names vaguely sound familiar, and I actually had to stop and go and Google everything. Went, oh, now I got it. I actually liked the H.G. Wells reference to the time machine, so that was cool. So then I started wondering whether the portal to another dimension was a time thing. So not having read your other books, I'm wondering whether he's her grandfather. I have no idea, but that's one thing in my head now. Yeah, I think, and I did like Maria. I think I probably would have enjoyed it more if I'd known the history. But I did the same thing in my books. I write about Adelaide, so you know, that's the thing. But it is good to see stuff that's not just set in England and not just set in London, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that grabbed me about this was that the the American Expeditionary Force into Mexico was the first air war in the world.
See, I didn't know any of that either. So, yeah, that probably took a dimension out of it for me. But that's the risk we do as writers, writing about things that are different. But that's also the good thing, because now I've gone and Googled stuff and learnt some stuff I didn't know.
So,
that's the yay thing about alternate history.
I will let David also speak to this, but I have to address part of it. This history isn't taught very much in the United States either. And so it may be more known regionally, but it's not widely discussed.
Yeah.
And World War One is very, very rarely discussed or taught in the States. And the Mexican Revolution, I mean...
Really?
Yeah, no, we've heard it's been mentioned. Gets mentioned occasionally in polite company. So
I suppose Australia was in World War One a lot, so we actually hear a lot about World War One and our cavalry, and yeah. So,
much less
being in the colonies.
And in fact, really, I think the main thing I knew about Pancho Villa before actually starting to research this book was that he, before Pearl Harbor, Pancho Villa's raid of Columbus, New Mexico was the first outside invasion by a non-American force after basically the War of 1812. So 1915, and it was just a raid basically for supplies, and Villa and his forces were thoroughly trounced, but that was about all I knew about it. I became a little more connected to it when I discovered that in the graveyard just about a mile that way from my house it was buried one of the people who was killed in that raid. But yeah, it's not even here, the Mexican Revolution isn't that well known or understood, or even the American Expeditionary Force into Mexico, which was basically a campaign to go rout out Pancho Villa. It was essentially, he invaded Columbus, and General Pershing was sent down in the real world to go rout him out, basically, and never succeeded in doing that because World War I got in the way and all those forces got sent over to Europe.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Yeah. So Karen, you had much the same journey I did with this book. I had to read up on the history myself. So.
Which is it's a good thing, really, because we learn from our history. Well,
absolutely.
We should learn from our history.
All right. We'll come back to that, I'm sure.
It's a long. That's another whole other chat. That is, isn't it?
It is, and more tea, and possibly more whiskey. All right, Corolius, I see you there, looking very dapper, sir.
There we go. Howdy. Let me take a drink here.
Oh my goodness, you are dressed for the occasion.
I'm drinking ginger tea, and after June's comment, I ran across the room and then put a dash of tequila in it. It's quite good.
Oh, good. Oh, lovely.
During the discussion, I was taken with David's analysis of the publishing process and how the idea of steampunk has been partitioned into so many things that in a way the steampunk no longer exists. And it just struck me that so much of our everyday society through our media and other things is exactly operates in just the same process, our societal issues and everything are partitioned in such particular ways that the real problems that we face no longer exist within our frame of reference. They exist within other people's frames of reference. And I think in a way, that's why we don't think about these several revolutions that took place just across the border. I think a lot of people are afraid that if people realize the empowerment that the underclass has, they would be in a lot of trouble. So no one really teaches us about it. But I love the story. Not to denigrate the, diminish the genre, but I think the story is really perfect for visualization as a Twilight Zone episode, where we see, Pancho Villa, and he needs something different in a hurry, and there's this hole in the sky, and his episode in a parallel or some other world, and he comes back with just the thing to turn the so and just the time in which all of this happens, the speed of the way the novel progresses and so forth is really fits the Twilight Zone type of development. So I enjoyed it on that level. And as a piece of kind of alternative history in an area that, I'm a little familiar with, having tromped around some of that area across the border and back, for various projects. So, and something else that was very prescient that someone else mentioned earlier, the little twist at the end. Was that Maria in the cantina? Who was she working for? Well, not just say Argentina or Chile, it was the Pacific Entente. And it was beginning just then with the Japanese and Russian encounters in the Pacific and so forth. So I thought that was a very prescient vision of the political structures. And it's something that's developed tremendously right now, as we see with the South China Sea and the Chinese relations with Nicaragua and the canal in South America for resources and so forth. So I thought that was, really spot on. It means that David's like theoretical or, just, his method of developing hunches about how would things work out, in this kind of modeling, and to see that it's really predictive makes the whole idea of, time travel through a hole by using an airship to go in and an airplane to come out. It's really pretty interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed the whole experience.
Yes, that's excellent and wonderful observations.
And I do have to give some credit to. I can't take all the credit for the Chinese South American alliance there. That was because, of course, this was, and we maybe should have said this at the outset, but the books, the universe was basically Robert E. Vardaman, who wrote the first book in the set, basically set up a Bible for this world, and that was part of the Bible that was in there that no one else had used yet. And I thought, that it just made so much sense to me. I had to find a way to work that into the story, and so that was. Yeah. So I can't take credit for inventing it, but I do take full credit for running with it.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful detail.
You took that across the line. That's a really prescient universe to set up. It's very fascinating. So go back and find some more in the series.
Excellent. Thank you, Corolius.
Sure.
All right, Charity, you're up next, my dove. Hello.
So, this morning I realized, well, last night I realized I hadn't read the book yet. Oh no! And then I read the wrong book. But your other books are amazing, David, and I love them. But I read 2 of your books today. So, yay for that. So, the book that we're talking about today, I was kind of worried that the first 3 chapters, like, it's a war book. It's war. It's just war. And then it flips back into the steampunk and the alternative universe. I'm like, oh, yes, this is my soul. Maria is my life. I love her. I love that she's not working for the expected.
Right.
But it just made everything beautiful. I need to know more about Alicia. I needed everything about Maria, especially the whole, you know, the thing you ran with to the Chinese and Quetzalcoatl's Chinese dragon, which brilliant, just brilliant. So yeah, everything about the book was wonderful once I realized it wasn't a war book after I read the wrong book first.
So what was the book you read first? I'm curious.
I don't remember because I have had to compartmentalize it today because I have read 5 novels in the past 3 days.
Yeah.
So I wrote notes to myself, this is this book. This is the book report I'm doing right now. Stop thinking about anything else.
Oh,
you know how it is.
And you did some writing yesterday. Charity is one of our
Yes, I did.
who submitted to the flash fiction contest. So busy couple of days.
And I got the new Madame Askew tea, well, new to me, and it is life. It's so good, the chocolate and the spice. Oh, my heart.
Yeah, no, it's so good. I'm drinking that right now. It's lovely. Thank you, Charity.
Great mind.
Yeah, no, right. Alicia, hello, my darling.
Hello. So I'm actually drinking water because I had a really bad lunch today.
Oh,
Lunch
no.
consisted of 3 shots of Krupnik and 2 chocolate chip cookies.
But it sounds delicious.
We were sitting in the backyard by the fire shooting the crap of their neighbor. So that was basically lunch.
So you need the water.
Yes. So my husband and I got up and went to go in to make dinner, and it was like, oh, I don't feel so good. Oh, I didn't eat today.
Oopsie.
Yeah. So we're with water. We're gonna be good.
Good.
I really liked I really liked the book in that it I guess especially because it was Pancho Villa, because I know of Pancho Villa only because they don't teach that in the East. Oh God, no. Southwest, well, we don't need to know that they don't teach that. But I have one of my friends in college was originally from Albuquerque. So she knows a little bit about it. But I had forgotten that it was World War I. So I'm reading this and I'm going, oh, cool, post-Napoleonic, this will be fun, la la la. And I'm reading it going, this is in 1850. This is way past the Civil War. Oh, shit. Damn, I got it wrong. But I was wondering why. I mean, I sort of understand why, but I thought it was interesting that the thing he brings back is like this World War I aircraft. It's like, wait, they have airships, but they don't have an airplane? My brain's going, wait, that's your takeaway? Really? But I did. I really liked the story. I thought it was very fun. And I think I have to seek out the rest of it and see the rest of the world. I'm a world person. So there wasn't, the one thing I disliked about the story is there wasn't a lot of the world because I'm a world person, but there was enough there for me to go, no, this is cool. I need to check this out. Fuck, I need to buy more books.
You definitely should check out the other books in the series, because Bob's story is set in the Europe of this world, and Steve Sullivan's is set in the Russia of this world, and Sarah's is set in the Japan of this world. And so definitely, as far as seeing more of what's kind of going on all around the world, that's the thing that. And in fact, just reading the rest of the books in the series will give you sort of more of that roundedness, I think. As far as the airplanes, and part of it was the Bible that Bob Vardaman gave me basically said that in this world there were no airplanes, and the other world is a more technologically advanced world with more machinery and so on and so forth. And so I thought, when I came on the idea of Pancho Villa being the central character in this, and of course the American Expeditionary Forces going down, they would have the advanced aircraft of the era, which were all airships as this world was defined. And so, of course, I had to give him a way to come up with one up on that, and that's sort of where the airplanes came from, and it made sense within that world. And I actually did an email exchange with Bob saying, do airplanes actually exist in the other world? And he said yes, that was good. So he was happy with that. So
yeah. And as I was reading the description of the plane, I'm like, oh my God, I know this plane. How does it? Oh my God, no, don't get in this, you'll die. Have you never seen this thing?
Well, many people lived through flying them, including my grandpapa. So death was not inevitable. But I'm going to move on to Cindy. Hello, thank you, Alicia. Hello, Cindy. Hello.
Hello. Okay, well, I'm another colonial, so I don't know the stories that well, but I did mostly enjoy the book. I'm not a cliffhanger fan, and that said it was kind of a cliffhanger ending. I like books that wrap up, unless I know there's a series and I've got the whole series, which I don't. So now I've got to get more books. I'm drinking my usual London Fog.
Oh, excellent.
And I like that you had two very strong female characters and neither one was a victim. That I quite enjoyed. I found myself not liking Maria till the end of the book. I guess I don't know. I really liked Althea. I identified more with her. And like I say, right up to the end of the book, I really didn't like Maria. I didn't trust her. Something wrong with her until the end. And it's like, oh, well, shit. Now I understand. Go, girl. Get the bastards. So, yes.
No, Maria really comes into her own at the end of the story.
Yes. And that whole Chinese connection. Ooh, that's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I know I'll have to read more of these stories as well. Thank you, Cindy.
And I think I have to be off because my husband has suppers ready, but I've quite enjoyed it. I shall be reading more. So goodbye to everyone.
Thank you for popping in and being with us, Cindy. And I'm glad we got you in before you had to go for dinner. So thank you, my dear. Good night. All right, Marissa, are you still with us?
Hang on one second. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, trying to turn video back on. There we go. Where I don't have a chapeau or anything, but I do have sort of a steampunky themed face mask.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah, that was courtesy of Spirit Halloween store, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness.
And my exciting drink is Culver's iced tea because I'm in my office and Culver's is 2 blocks away. So
perfect.
Went down at lunch and picked up a Culver's. So that was about it. So nothing exciting. There's a sad lack of alcohol in this office. That's for sure. Then again, we do substance abuse treatment. So it would probably be frowned upon if I had any kind of booze in my office at this point. Yeah. So completely dry. I agree with, was it Charity? The first 3 chapters, I'm not a fan of war books or war movies. And I actually put the book down several times during the first 3 chapters because I just was finding it hard to enjoy, you know, basically a war story. And then the very, you know, last bit of chapter 3, he goes through the portal and suddenly it got my attention. And then it was a book I wanted to read. I actually found myself liking Alethea and the alternate portal universe the best. I mean, I was still interested in the storyline that was going on with Pancho Villa and all the rest of it. And it's kind of nice that it is local to us. And, you know, I have been to Douglas and I knew the Gaston Hotel and such. But it really, I found what really captured my imagination was this alternate universe that we got this little peek at, you know, just briefly. And the fact even that, you know, that even he was about to go through the portal, thought about turning back around, you know, and going after Alethea and finding out what was going on. And then he goes through the portal and comes back to his own time and place anyway. And I kind of wanted to, you know, to stay in that environment just a little longer.
And find out what's going on with Althea. She's an intriguing character. Absolutely. Thank you, Marissa. Also, I see June is showing off her marvelous mask and Culver's tea. So marvelous. So, David, before we open up for more questions, I did have some thoughts listening to everyone and their wonderful observations. You do illuminate some parts of Pancho Villa's character that were new to me, and also some, let's say, some mystery, some conjecture. He did spend some time across the border. He did spend some time in Hollywood. And you bring up Ambrose Bierce, which was a name I knew.
Yes. Ambrose Bierce was a Pancho Villa fanboy, basically. And that is actually how Ambrose Bierce met his end. Is Ambrose Bierce came down to go hang out with Pancho Villa, and he disappeared. And no one knows actually what happened to him after that.
Did you find yourself leaning a bit into some of the mystery and the conjecture? And I don't want to say conspiracies, but there are many theories about Pancho Villa and Ambrose Bierce and all of the sorts of unknown bits of history. Did you sort of mine that to help with your alternate historical take?
You know, mostly in the sense that I think these larger than life characters like Pancho Villa tend to have a whole set of stories build up around them. And the fact that I think you kind of get to a point when you're that kind of a person, you kind of use that to your advantage to kind of hide behind and do what you want to do. And I kind of use that in Villa's character in this, that he's sort of, he knows who people think he is, and he is who he is, and he plays that off of people. And, you know, who he is kind of, you know, he's essentially a ladies' man who kind of does want justice, but he does, you know, but he also kind of likes, you know, being in charge of things. And, you know, he's, you know, and just, he's sort of this, you know, yeah, he really does want the justice for his people, but he, you know, is that really what he's all about? You know, is he actually a little bit about the power and the control of his faction? And, you know,
self-serving elements.
And you see that when you look at the actual history of the revolution and the different people that Villa was vying with at the time. And, you know, it wasn't always clear, you know, who's in charge of this revolution. And they really did faction off into different groups and different people siding with different aspects of the government and such. So that was the big thing that I really took away from it was it just was just really kind of not a clear-cut situation, because there were a lot, you know, so many different issues. And I think it has a lot to do with Mexico's history of being a country occupied by so many different countries over the previous century up until 1915, including the United States and France and
France, Spain, the United States.
Exactly.
A lot of colonial history in Mexico. So may I ask, and then I would like to open up questions to everyone. May I ask, I only really knew Pancho Villa from the outside of Mexican history, Mexican national history, revolutionary history, and he's not very well known outside, and I think sometimes he's portrayed as strictly a villain or a bit of a Robin Hood figure, romanticized a bit. What is the nature of his sort of, how is he treated in Mexican history? Do you know? Is he considered to be an important positive figure? Is he a negative character in the national history? Do you know? I know you are.
I think the answer is all of the above. It really depends on who you ask and who, certainly here in the Southwest, and I think growing up in California when I did, he became kind of a folk hero for the Chicano movement of the 70s in a big way. And I think because he was, I think it was simply because he was a fairly, a powerful Latino figure and a figure of the people, and people embraced that. But I think his legacy is as complex as he really himself was. I think there's all different, you can probably find people who view him very much as a villain and as this anarchist kind of rebel, and people who look at him as a hero who brought, helped to make Mexico a more democratic society. And it's just very, it's just a very complex kind of picture. He's a complex person, and it's a complex, left a very complex legacy.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. One last observation. I was startled when he was wearing a pith helmet on the cover of the story. I thought, Pancho Villa and a pith helmet, why?
Well, the story behind, again, and let me actually back up just a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about how I was invited into writing this to begin with. And that was that Bob Vardaman had come to me and said, I've started this world that's set in this alternate 1915, and it's an alternate 1915 where Queen Victoria is still on the throne and getting younger. Teddy Roosevelt is still president of the United States and building an empire. The Russian Revolution failed, and there's still a czar in Russia. The Meiji Restoration failed, and there are still samurai in Japan. And this whole 1915 concept, and he says, would you like to write a story in it? And I said, sure. And he sent me the World Bible for it. And I kept thinking, okay, what part of 1915 grabs me enough to want to write a story? And this is a story, this is a world where World War I has not yet happened because of what all is going on there. And power is struggling, but we haven't actually unleashed World War I. And I happened to come across, as I was doing my research, essentially this photo, which is a real photo of Pancho Villa. And basically the story is he was actually given that pith helmet, and he thought it was funny. And so he had a whole bunch, he basically did a photo shoot in an American pith helmet and the khakis and the whole bit. And but it struck me that 1915, that's right at the time of Pancho Villa's power. It's like, so I started reading everything I kind of could about him and said, there's a story to tell here in this world. And so it was all from this photo, real photo of Pancho Villa in a pith helmet, which apparently he really hardly ever wore, but he did own one, and he thought it was a hoot. And he, like I say, he was all about the publicity. He was all about having doing photo shoots and things like that, which is a whole other aspect of his personality.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, pith helmet, how exciting. So now then, everyone, please raise your hands either physically or use the little reaction button at the bottom of your screen, and you can raise your hand like that. If you have a question, I would love to bring those questions to David. So, yeah. Yes, June, are you raising your hand? No, you're not. Oh my goodness. If you don't ask questions,
The trouble is that my camera on my iPad is on the side. So it looks like I'm raising my hands when I'm not.
All right. Well, I won't make you ask a question unless you have one.
I don't have a question. I just want to say that I like this book very much. I enjoy all of David's books, and I hope there are more coming in the other universe. Are there more coming in the other universe, David?
Well, no one has actually there was supposed to be another one that was being written, and I don't know what actually happened to that one. A fellow named Rick Overwater was writing that. And
I meant in actually your universe, but go ahead.
Yes, but in my universe, in this specific book in this, I do want to go back and write a sequel with Pancho Villa, going back and what he finds in the other world. And actually, when I finished this, that was actually the first question Bob asked me was, is there going to be a sequel? And I've had the good intentions of doing that all along, but haven't gotten there quite yet. So.
Well, there's a crossover with the brazen shark, wolves, etc. in this one with Cisneros, and I was wondering are you going to write any more things in that universe?
Yeah.
Now, I do want to write more in that universe. Now, one thing I will point out about there is another crossover which people may or may not have picked up, and that is Alethea.
Yeah.
Who is, if you remember back for those who've read the Clockwork Legion books,
yes,
Alethea does not exist. She actually died in childhood. Her cousin Larissa carries on her memory. Larissa basically is her older cousin who because of Alethea's death, became the crime fighter that she does in those books. Oh. But in this one, Alethea has lived and actually becomes a force in her own right. And so this world is not exactly the same world.
No, I know. I was wondering whether you were writing any more Clockwork Legion books. I'm sorry. I didn't get that across.
But yes, I am not currently writing any, but I do have plans to write more. Yes.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, June. Jeanette, you had a kitten in your frame. Kitten tax, please. Oh, you're muted. Oh, I still can't hear you.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so yes, we got a new kitten, and he's been terrorizing our older cat because he wants to play, and she does not even know how to play anymore because she's like 7 and she hasn't played with anyone because my older cat DC was also not a player. So he came over and like jumped and clawed my leg because that's how he asks for attention. And so he got picked up and snuggled.
All right. Well, he's lovely. Thank you for sharing him.
Oh, you bet. You bet. He is adorable.
And since I have you on the spot, do you have any questions for David?
So actually, I kind of do have a question. And so it goes back to when we were talking about genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think it's plausible or reasonable that steampunk will just sort of get merged into historical fiction or the overall science fiction, because science fiction itself is really such a broad category anymore that it seems like, well, for a while it needed a special label, but maybe it just doesn't anymore. That because there are so many pieces out there that it fits just as easily into science fiction in general or historical fiction or both, that it's just no longer necessary to make it special like that for selling books.
Right, and I think, it's so weird how it's labeled in bookstores and such anyway, because it's, the great story I heard, which was from a lady who's the vice president of the Science Fiction Poetry Association, who used to work in a bookstore, and she used to, people would come up to her all the time, as she would say, and ask for, I'm looking for, I'm looking for science fiction like Game of Thrones. And, and meaning, just that it all kind of got lumped into that section of the store. And I think, I think to some degree, science fiction has become kind of the catch-all for all of it. I mean, usually it's not, I think we all know it's its own thing, and I think certainly there's the big divide between science fiction and fantasy, but even within that, there's alternate history. There's all the different flavors of this. And I think I think what it comes down to is it's one of those genres, because it is very much speculative. I think it's going to continue to live on the science fiction or science fiction and fantasy shelves. Now, whether it's going to be acquired as much and sold as much in the mainstream, that's a very good question. And I can't quite see into the crystal ball well enough to say, I hope many people come and write it and editors acquire it. But again, I think it's, I think like a lot of these things, I think that in fact there's going to be an ebb and flow. It's, a good example of that is how often over my career I've heard that no one writes vampires anymore. And yet about every 5 years or so, vampire books have a resurgence. And I think we will see steampunk, I think, do that too. There will be times when it'll be more popular and times it'll be less popular. Yeah. And I think many of us kind of came in and basically rode that first euphoric wave of it becoming very popular. And then it kind of faded as things will, as a lot of more mainstream people kind of lost interest or what have you. But I firmly believe at some point down the road, it will eventually have another wave of rise. Maybe not as much as it did before, but I think it'll come back again and have a phase of popularity. Who knows what'll trigger it? But I think.
Right. Thank you, David, and great question, Jeanette. Lovely. Right, Alan, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hello. So, David, there's like 4 books in the series. Do they touch each other in any way other than just the same universe from the sort of instructions that you got?
They really don't directly touch each other. They're all kind of standalone stories in this world. And I think Bob had the idea that he wanted to get to a point where they would eventually start crossing and tying, and characters from one would come into the other. But again, it's one of those things that I think everyone involved kind of got busy and on to other projects. And the way this world was defined was, I think Bob had a great idea, which was, his suggestion was that everyone basically self-published their book in the series. And the idea is, I don't get money from Bob's book, I don't get money from Steve and Sarah's books, and vice versa. They don't get money from mine. Basically, where the cross-pollination comes is from us basically talking about our books to each other. But the idea was, Bob and Stephen especially, who were right there at the beginning, thought was we would get these characters a little more tangled up. And I think if I think the books start to pick up a little bit of momentum, you know, hint, hint, if people talk about the books and encourage others to read them, and people see this as a lucrative direction, you know, that's not off the table. So, and I know Bob would like to come back to it. I have talked to him fairly recently about that.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
And thank you, Alan. Great question. Bill, I see your hand went up.
Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone about our Goodreads page that's tracking all of our books, and that if you go to it now, to the temporal textual talks reading list, you'll get a sneak preview of what next month's book happens to be.
Oh yes, and we are going to share the book. We figured out our book for next month today, so that's why you will find out also today. Thank you, Bill. And I'd like to dovetail with that and remind everyone, as you go forth from book club today, do visit Goodreads or Amazon, or any but Barnes and Noble, right? Any place where you can review books publicly and review the book. Leave your positive or whatever, 2 sentences and some stars, because that really helps. It helps other people find the book, but also it drives a little bit more traffic to our authors.
And that's the thing that lets us know that, that these books are, these books got into your heart, affected you in some way, positive, negative. It's the kind of why we're here doing this. And, I was going to say, while Bill was on the line, that you asked about Kumi. She's actually just come and sit next to me.
My computer went bluey and decided it wasn't talking to the internet anymore.
Hello, Kumi. It's good to see your face.
So don't fear, if she has a question, I will hear it.
Fair enough.
So do we have any other questions? Do raise your hand if you have another question. Alan, thank you for sharing the link. Well, David, I have another question for you before we wrap up.
Okay.
That is, what new exciting news do you have? Do you have any more books or appearances or anything happening in the near future?
Oh, well, let me, I'll kind of start. I have a stack of books over here to share, but I will start by saying that the one thing I am actually working on right now, I can talk about a little bit of it. I can't give you a lot of details yet, but it's essentially a World War II era alternate history that is for of all things, a set of books that are themed around cryptids. And this is set up in Gallup, New Mexico at the beginning of World War II, but not a war story. And we will, I can't say much more about that, but it is also a novella. And if you like Revolution of Air and Rust, I think Breaking the Code will be one to watch for. So as for the stack of books, of course, I do want to show off. These are 2 of the other books in the series: Gateway to Rest and Ruin by Robert E. Vardaman and Unforgiven by Sarah Barch. And you can actually find the links to all the books of the series if you go to my page, davidleesummers.com, and go to the page for Revolution of Air and Rust. And I have Amazon links there for all of the other books in the series.
Good, thank you.
And if you are not afraid of reading David Lee Summers' books, in November, there is the Vampire Library Book Club, hosted out of New Orleans, Louisiana, is reading next month my book, Scarlet Order. Here it is with its brand new cover by Chaz Kemp, who many of us around Tucson know. He's been a guest of honor at Tuscon. And we're basically the Vampire Library Book Club is, and if anyone here who's a friend on Facebook would like an invitation, I'm happy to do that. I will, on my blog post on Tuesday coming up, I will have a direct link to that too. So you can go to davidleesummers.wordpress.com on Tuesday and click the link if you want to join the club. It's not quite as sociable a format. They do it more me and the interviewer, but you can log in and ask questions and interact. And there will be giveaways and door prizes at that one. And Kumi has crocheted a Nosferatu as one of our giveaways for that. So you want a chance to win this fellow.
Oh, that's so good.
Come to the interview, if nothing else, come, even if you don't read the book, come and hang out at the interview at the end of the month. It is free to join the book club, and the boutique does have actually a couple of delightful bundles with my book, and Marita, who's the owner, Marita Crandall, who owns the store, has a delightful book called Vampires, basically all about New Orleans real vampire history. That I highly recommend, and so you can get that together with my book and goodies from the boutique for a nice special price. Again, that'll all be on my blog post.
Thank you, David. And so we do have our little Facebook group, the Temporal Textual Talks, or T3. You know, the Grand Arbiter and I are not to be unsupervised with naming things because we abuse ourselves, much to the detriment of everyone else. But we have this group, and I encourage you to share your links to your blog posts there so that everyone can go directly. And please, and I say this to all of our authors, that means you as well, Karen, and you, Bill, please do always share your new releases and your direct links to buying your books. We all love all of you here, and we want to support you, and we want to know where your books are available and when they're available. So thank you, David. Yes. And if you're not in the group, then I will share it again on the Madame Askew page. So, oh, June, I'm sorry you're having connection problems, but I'm glad you're still here. So we are about to wrap up. Bill, have I forgotten anything to ask David?
I don't think so. No, I think you covered it pretty well.
All right. Are there any last questions from our delightful temporal entourage who are here today? Yes, Alicia has a question. All right, good.
Well, no one else has asked this, so I guess I'm going to ask it. I know you had planned on writing stories about Pancho Villa going back through the portal, but are you also considering a story with Maria? And what happens next?
And I think, I think that would take a fair amount of research. And yeah, when I started thinking about that whole side of the world, and once I started playing in that sandbox, it's like I kind of did that as the end of the book, but I realized that I kind of stopped myself because I know that's something I would really like to go down and explore, and I don't know that that wouldn't necessarily be part of a sequel, maybe. Again, I haven't plotted that much of it out yet, but yeah, I think I would definitely like to go back down and see Maria and that world in South America more.
Oh, it's delicious. It's a delicious hit. And there's so much possibility. I do hope you will write more about Maria and that population. I'm very intrigued. So I will, second Alicia on that front. So yeah, no, it was really interesting, David. And as usual, You gave us a lot of wonderful characters. You are marvelous at developing characters, as I have known since the first page I read from you. And you also have this ability to make us want to read more every single time. So thank you for that, David.
Thank you all for coming out tonight and for reading Revolution of Air and Rust. And I hope it was enjoyable for you. I had a lot of fun writing it.
Thank you. And one last thing before you go. You sort of answered this by recommending further reading in the shared world. And Fiona, you can see, is also asking you some questions from next to me. My goodness. Is there anything else you recommend to us as a good read, something that you think we would like if we have been enjoying you?
Oh, let me see. And of course, I came prepared with Bob and those I'll say not actually a very good set of. I know the club read straight out of Tombstone, which because partly I was in it, yes. But don't neglect the two other books in that series, which are straight out of Dodge City and straight out of Deadwood, which have a lot of really good Weird Western, steampunk kinds of crossovers. You will find people like Charlene Harris and Joe R. Lansdale and oh goodness, Jeff Marriott is in there, Jane Linspold, just a whole treasure trove of authors playing in sort of a Weird Western sandbox, and everyone from bestsellers to new people who you hadn't necessarily discovered before. So wonderful authors to read more of from those books.
Oh, thank you, wonderful. I have to tell those of you who have not been with our in-person book club, do read straight out of Tombstone. Start there. It's wonderful. Very good set of short stories. And Fiona agrees. She highly encourages you. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, David, for your generous time with us. You are always a delight. It's so good to see you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
And we will post a bunch of links to the Facebook group, including the link to the group. And we will see you next month for book club on the third Sunday of the month. Also, we still have some COVID-ween activities happening, so watch the master schedule. There's too much to list all at once right now. In the meantime, have a wonderful, marvelous Sunday evening. Karen, have a very good Monday afternoon. So, and thank you, Kumi, for being here and sharing David with us.
No problem. Sorry, my computer got bluey.
No, I'm just happy you're here. It's so good to see you. All right, my darlings. Thank you. Good night, everyone. It's been wonderful.